What's going on, everybody? I want to talk to you today about, are high yield funds risky? And I want to also talk about, is margin risky? And I want to just talk about it from my perspective because I'm making a video on it. This is Mike, the Tactical Stock Scalper. All right, baby. I got my little notes here, so I'm going to look down from time to time. Okay. As far as risk goes with high yield funds, let's start here. As with anything, it depends upon you as an individual and what your risk tolerance is and your pain tolerance is in your account. There's nobody, I don't care, YouTube, Reddit, Facebook, doesn't matter. There's no one that can tell you these funds are risky, and there's no one that can tell you that these funds are not risky, because this is an individual thing where each person needs to decide for themselves. So please don't let my content or anyone else's content sway you. Now, when I first started getting into them, high yield funds, I was skeptical, and I saw a bunch of stuff on YouTube, of course, and most of it was negative. This was, year and a half ago, whatever. And the market, obviously, didn't rip up like it has this year at that point, right? We were in a correction or whatever, pull back, and people were like, how horrible these funds are. You're going to lose all your money. They should be illegal, stuff like that. Well, had they known it was going to be the year-long bull run, they probably wouldn't have said that stuff, but they didn't know that. And by and large, these funds, meaning yield max or high yield funds, and most of them, not all of them, in general, have gone up with the market. Now, it's about your individual risk tolerance. Let me just touch on this for a minute. Me, I left a job 15, 16 years ago now to pursue the food business. And the food business is extremely risky. Because we do mobile vending, right? So we got to worry about weather, waste, health department, yada, 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 all these things. So not only is starting your own business risky, but leaving, a normal 9-to-5 job, whatever, to pursue the food business, which is extremely risky. And if you've never been in it, you have no idea about the risk level. So I consider my risk tolerance rather high. And the food business has been great for us. So thank God I got in the food business. And then second, thank God I got into high yield funds. I had no idea how well they perform. And I was very skeptical at first, but as time has gone on and I stuck with it and started putting more and more money into them, they have just been absolutely wonderful this past year. I didn't anticipate the market and some of these underlyings to go up like they did, but they did. And so for me, the risk on high yield funds is very minimal for me. And I can only speak for me. And it was kind of one of these things, like when I told you I left a job to pursue the food business. My initial plan for retirement was going to be like JEPQ, SCHD, all that stuff, right? And have to spend 5 to 6 years pouring as much into them as I possibly could so my wife and I could actually live off the dividends. Well, like when I left the job, it was a risk I couldn't afford not to take. And the same thing with high yield funds. I figured, you know what? Since my plan is 5, 6, 7, 8 years of doing JEPQ, SCHD, etc., this is a risk I can't afford not to take. And I'm so glad I took the risk on high yield funds. So do I consider them risky? Absolutely not. Not even close to a food business. But to me, it's like a normal stock anyway, now that I've been in it for so long. If you're in a crap underlying or a crap stock, right, it's going to go down. Well, if your high yield fund mimics that crap stock, it's going to go down. Pretty simple, right? And if the underlying goes up or your stock goes up, so will the high yield fund associated with it. And it's been proven over the past year and a half. So, maybe after a correction, and I don't say maybe, definitely after a correction or a long, prolonged period, I'm going to start funneling money into safer, what I would consider anyway, safer funds like JEPQ, etc. Now I want to talk about margin. Before I begin, I got a membership group. If you want to join that, I share my trades. We have a Discord server, a lot of great information in there. It's only $4 a month. Cancel anytime. I'll leave a link in the description. Okay. Is margin risky? Well, I talked about my risk tolerance, right? Coming from or owning a food company and leaving a normal job, then getting high yield funds. Now, margin for me and me only was a risk I was not willing to take. I thought high yield funds were risky enough, right? Without the additional, for me, weight of the margin. And because the goal was to retire, I didn't want to have any debt. I wanted all the money to be mine. I didn't want it to go back to anyone else. And I understand there's different things with lower interest rates, and you can use it. I get it. I get it. And for some people, and I think, if you're, this is just, again, my opinion, I think if you're trying to grow your portfolio versus living off your portfolio, I think margin has a lot less risk associated with it because you could recover if something went horribly wrong with your margin. If you're trying to live off that account, that risk becomes much greater. At least to me it does, right? And I don't care what if it was free, that'd be different, or 1% or 2%, but, something like that, of course. Now, for me, I just can't do margin. I'm trying to live off the account, and I'm always thinking about not what I can make, but how much am I going to lose if crap hits the fan and all my stuff goes down for like a year. I'm more concerned about what I will be losing versus with margin, how much I'll be making. Now, in saying all that, had I known the future and this was going to be a great bull run, I would have been margin like a mother. But I didn't know that. I didn't know when a market was going to correct or come down, or when it will. No one does. But as it keeps going up, I think the risk becomes greater to use margin because the inevitable will happen. And the longer I don't know, just my thoughts on margin. Now, for me, would I ever use margin? Well, yes, I would. But for me, it would have to meet certain criteria, right? The market would have to either go through a very prolonged correction, show some stability at some point, using an EMA or a price level, whatever, that looked like it could possibly be a bottom after some time, then I might dip my toe in margin. Or if we get a down year, 2, then I would start looking at using margin because I think at that point, the risk is much more minimal of it continuing to drop versus now, as the market keeps ripping, the risk becomes greater and greater with every day and every tick the market's going up. So margin, again, it's a personal preference like anything else, and don't let anyone tell you margin is too risky or not too risky. This is a decision you have to make, and please use your due diligence and don't listen to any YouTuber or Reddit or Facebook or Discord to tell you one way or the other. You have to make your own decisions based upon what's best for you and your family. Hope you enjoyed the content. This is Mike, the Tactical Stock Scalper, out.